wounded soldiers lying in this hospital. Well, they called off our performance because there was too many. It was at the beginning of the Bulge. We didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, that's right. That was the beginning.
The shells were flying all night long as we were trying to sleep. And when we come down the next morning, that was something else. He said, "Well, how'd you sleep?" "Not very good, you know."
I went to bed, and the next morning at 6 o'clock, one of my messengers came over to waken me, and he said, "Everything's popping loose." And I said, I told this man, to go on and leave me alone. I said, and then at that time, I heard the screaming Mimis start coming in, the artillery and all types of artillery. That was December the 16th. That was a very, very rough day. And by that night, the Germans were all over us, within 10, 15 yards right in front of us. If you could see a bunch of wild cattle running wild, that's what it reminded you of. I believe they were doped. I believe that the German soldiers were doped to a certain extent, because they were acting as if, I don't care if I get killed or not. They were like wild men. That's the best I could describe it of that first night.
I thought that my division had been hit by what we'd been taught in the fancy language of military academies and books as a spoiling attack. And that it just amounted to getting our act together and we'd throw them out. I certainly never believed that we'd been hit by a force really going to tear us up. Never.
The men on the front line were hunkered in foxholes, cut off from each other. They had no idea they were being hit by one of the largest German artillery attacks of the war, or that they were outnumbered in some places by 10 to 1.
We lost many men that first day. An infantry company was approximately 200 men. A company was 21 men after the first day. C company could account for 59 men. And in my company, I only lost 28 men the first day. Every company commander was missing the first day except my company's commander. It's really hard to believe, but it happened. Some of my better men in garrison were some of the first ones to crack under combat conditions. They were like hugging each other and just shivering from scared. Never had seen such a thing before.
Dwight Eisenhower and Omar Bradley, the two most powerful commanders in Europe, got word of the attack on the 16th at Versailles. But the news had little impact that first day. Ike went to a reception to toast his orderly's new bride and his own promotion to 5-star general. The British commander, Field Marshal Montgomery, was briefed while on the golf course.
On the afternoon of the 16th, there was no real worry or concern about the severity of the attack. Those worries started on Sunday morning. And I remember General Bradley walking up into the war room that afternoon, looking at the map and said, "Where in the world has the son of a bitch gotten all of this stuff?" He preceded that by saying, "Pardon my French." He was a very mild-mannered man in his speech. But yes, everyone was genuinely surprised by the force of the German attack at that point.
By Monday, refugees were streaming down the streets with their household possessions, and their faces are absolutely grim, and there's no greeting of any kind. And you know that you're looking at, a classic kind of thing, refugees before the enemy. And one of the first things I did was to go up to headquarters up the hill. And there it looked as though it was a recently disturbed ant hill. People were running in all directions. Soldiers were running in all, at seemingly haphazard, jumping on vehicles that were taking off. At that time, there seemed to be nobody in charge. Nobody in charge. I saw one higher officer absolutely lose his wits, and he seemed to be trying to crank a Jeep. There haven't been cranks on cars for a long time. He was just absolutely panic-stricken. And that disturbed me a lot. That shook me up.
It was not an orderly retreat. We were just doing what we thought was best at that particular time. Primarily, we were backing up. We didn't really know where we were going, but it was primarily backing up.
Nothing was organized in the way of retreat.
Nothing was...
No, because we were too spread out and too confused to begin with.
Norm Plum and Clyde Burkholder made up the better part of the trombone section of the 28th Division Dance Band. Clyde was a 5'1" crooner, with a voice reminiscent of Eddie Cantor, but with little talent for soldiering. He and Plum were part of the ad hoc assembly of rearguard troops now charged with engaging the Panzertruppen.
And they divided us up, the band, with others, quartermaster, people from finance. A lot of them had weapons they didn't even know how to use properly.
Including the band.
Yeah, when they, in fact, I think some of the band I heard had a bazooka, or somebody had one.
You gotta be kidding. We were lucky we could load a carbine, let alone a machine gun, and everybody's standing.
Well, that's all we had is carbines.
Yeah, but I was thinking that when I brought the bullets there, and everybody kept saying, "What are they for?"
Well, starting at noon, we went to hell in a handbasket. As soon as we got into the woods, we ran into Germans. And as we pushed forward, we ran into more and more Germans until by the time we got to the road that we were supposed to cut and go across, we were just backed up. It was a heavy firefight. There was a lot of fire. My platoon was just melting away. I went back and found the company first sergeant, who said, "There's an order for us to pull out. Come back." And in the dusk, I saw a man, and I yelled at him to, I'm sure fairly obscenely, to get his act out of there, that we were leaving, and he wasn't mine, he was a German, and he shot me. And I was put in the aid station, and I remember during the night, the chaplain came to me and said, "Ollie, we gotta go. And we're gonna leave those of you who cannot walk in the aid station under the care of a medic, a soldier who's volunteered to look after you." And it dawned on me then that things had gotten serious, that you don't abandon, you don't leave your wounded, you get them out. And what he was telling me is, we can't get you out.
On either the 18th or 19th, which would have been the third or fourth day, the senior colonel called back to division headquarters and said, "We have no ammunition," because they only had 48 rounds per man to begin with, and that was gone after the 3 days. He called back to the division commander and said, "We have no choice but to surrender."
Encircled and under artillery